Scooby-Doo Night of 100 Frights is a game released in 2002 for the PlayStation 2, GameCube, and Xbox. This specific review is for the GameCube version, although they're all virtually identical. It was developed by Heavy Iron Studios, who worked on a number of different licensed titles, including SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom and the Pixar titles, all under THQ. They became independent in 2009 and did contract work for Activision among others. They're still around today, but owned by Keyword Studios, where they continue to offer assistance to other gaming companies. Originally, the game was set to release on the PlayStation 1, which was initially revealed on the VHS tape for Alien Invaders. The story was quite different, with the gang being invited to a TV studio when suddenly the Phantom appears, and they had to collect 12 keys while avoiding their past foes. A build of this was released on the internet in 2021. It's not clear why this version was not released, but it's possible it was a quality issue. The game itself is a 3D platformer Metroidvania, where the player plays as Scooby and goes around an elaborate haunted house in the surrounding area collecting items and Scooby snacks, as well as saving other members of the gang. While the basic toolkit is fairly limited, running, jumping, swinging, eventually inventions give the ability to dash into enemies, spit out a ranged soap bubble attack, and float. The game generally controls well, and while Scooby is a little bit slippery, he makes up for it with good air control. In the latter third of the game, the platforming becomes significantly more tight, and some areas can require over a dozen attempts to get through, which can be frustrating, but generally the punishment for failing is fairly minor, respawning at the start of the relatively small rooms. The combat system is extremely basic, with the football item giving Scooby the ability to dash into enemies, and for the majority of the game, that's it. Some monsters take one hit, and others take two. The villains themselves are either fairly basic animals, or monster designs from the original series comes to life due to the Mastermind. There's a range, although nearly all of them are from the Where Are You series. They're colorful and have fairly accurate sound effects and designs, so in general it's a fun treat to run into new foes. This is augmented by the Monster Gallery, where after collecting tokens spread throughout the levels, the player gains access to their biographies, and a bit of trivia. Some of these require a bit of puzzling or backtracking to get to, which makes them feel like a real reward. The environments are one of the strongest features, with a good amount of variety. There's a hedge maze, canning factory, abandoned lab, and typical haunted house, but even within the individual locations, there are different acts. These can all be seen on the fast travel screen, which is a bit messy but conveys the theme well enough. The colors of them can be a bit muted, but the variety keeps them from being too boring. The levels are all interconnected, with most areas having more than one exit, making the world feel more cohesive and offering rewards for mastery of the map through faster traversal. Throughout the game, there are snack gates, which require a number of different Scooby snacks, effectively coins, that are spread throughout the levels. These start out small, requiring 50 or 100, but eventually scale up to needing 800 for the final one. This can require going back to the previous levels and scouring them for the precious morsels, although there is a convenient tracker on the map that displays the number collected, making this process easier. This encourages exploration, and while it does elongate the game, it doesn't feel unnecessary at all. The weakest part of the game is definitely the boss fights, of which there are 4. The Black Knight, Green Ghost, Redbeard, and the Mastermind. The first 3 each give an item necessary for progression, although speedrunners have figured out ways to skip all of that, unsurprisingly. I personally tried one of the tricks for 2 hours, but couldn't get it, and there's no footage of my continuous failures. Here's a quick video of how the 2 final tricks should work. All the fights are technically multi-stage, but each stage is slightly more of their normal attacks with a wave of enemies between each one. While they do make use of the mechanics of the previous level, there's no real challenge and they feel more like speed bumps than anything else, slowing down progression slightly without offering interesting gameplay. The final boss follows the same pattern. It is an unfortunately lackluster end. The bosses are a small percentage of the game, however, and most of it is platforming and collection aspects, which are much better, so while it's a definite downside, it's not a deal breaker. Overall, the game is a lot of fun, and a big part of that is player feedback. The audio uses the laugh track from the series, as well as a satisfying chomp whenever Scooby collects his snacks. Authentic cartoon sound effects play when running, and the bonks and yells all feel identical to the show. There are even some Easter eggs. If the game is played on certain days of the year, there are additional particle effects, like hearts for Valentine's Day or flowers for the anniversary of the show. It's little touches like that show that the team cared, and they're spread all throughout. The whole thing just feels right, from the animations to the interactions with the characters, including Don Knotts as the groundskeeper and Tim Curry as the villain. The story feels like a typical Scooby-Doo plot, and while it's not a major feature, it's serviceable enough. The game is arguably the best in the franchise, and for a licensed kids game, the attention to detail is almost second to none. Looking at the tier list, this is a solid B, with the detracting elements being the boss fights and unfortunate lack of color in most of the environments. Thank you for watching, and be well.